Welcome back to Wise Tech for Wise Money. Today's episode is called Building the Future of Customer Support, how Guillermo Salazar founded IrisCX in prop tech and home services. In this episode, we explore how real operational problems in customer service and field support led to the creation of a technology business that is reshaping how organizations resolve issues remotely using AI and visual engagement. I'm Gary Wayne, the founder of A1 Solutions International. We help leadership teams improve efficiency and scale through AI and smart technology strategy. Today I'm joined by Guillermo Salazar, I do apologize, co-founder and CEO of IrisCX, a company transforming how organizations in prop tech, home services, utilities and product support handle customer experiences. IrisCX enables customers to visually show issues in real time, allowing service teams to resolve problems remotely using AI-powered guidance, reducing truck rolls, cutting costs and improving satisfaction. Welcome, Guillermo. How are you today?
Good. How you doing, Gary? How's things?
Sorry about the tongue-tied introduction.
Well, that's okay. It's not the first time.
There was a lot to get through, and I'm out of practice. But it's good to have you on the show.
Wonderful.
Take us back to when you to your early start of your career and how you got to where you are today.
I mean, it's like everyone's journey. It's a bit of a story that you don't really land. You don't really plan at the very beginning, but you end up where you end up. You kind of get pulled into the right places. And so I came out of school with a finance degree, and my goal was to be a marketing trader, right? To trade commodities. And at the time, the commodity market was in the dumper. Enron was on the verge of going bankrupt, and so all those things were happening at the same time. So it wasn't a great time in the market to go look for those kind of careers. And I ended up in tech. And the one thing that was interesting about two things that happened at the same time. I ended up working in tech for a fast-growing consulting company, and I ended up working directly for the founder of that company. It was around 350 consultants at the time. And so I did a lot of work both for the growth of the organization, in addition to the execution of the function of consulting. So learned a lot of tech along the way, in addition to just learning how the consulting business is run. So those two things at the same time kind of like began to plant a seed for the rest of my career.
So what sort of companies did you start with before you got to setting up your own company?
Yeah, so I started out, so worked for a big four company, PwC, for 4 or 5 years. And then after PwC, they were going through an acquisition. I was working in Europe. And coming home to the PwC office just didn't make a ton of sense. So I went on my own as an independent freelancer, did that for a few years, and then along the way realized that there's more and more and more freelancers doing work, the good work, versus the big firms. So I got together a couple other chaps, and we formed a consulting company. We grew that consulting company really quickly over the next 4 or 5 years, and then ended up selling that to Deloitte. And then at the same time, while we sold that to Deloitte, I'd started up a product company, and like in sporting goods, and kind of launched that, and that grew very quickly as well. While I was going through the back end of that acquisition, so two companies, so going through an acquisition, running, kind of growing that part of the business, and then starting up the product company. Product company grew really quickly. I think unfortunately COVID kind of like shortened the life of that company. We ended up exiting that post-COVID. I exited Deloitte just before COVID, and then ultimately started up Iris. And then Iris came along basically as a reflection of my frustration with home service. And then, the story goes that my car was, in North America, or Western Canada specifically, we keep our car in a garage. And my garage door was broken. And so consequently, I couldn't get my car out of my garage for like 3 days. And I got really frustrated when the fellow showed up, banged the garage door rail with a hammer, charged me $300 and said, hey, if I could have seen the problem, I could have solved it for you. And that kind of got us thinking, okay, well, what will this look like? And so I met with some co-founders at the time, and we kind of drafted up what the experience should look like. If we were building it, and then we went and built an MVP, and then we went to go to market and started selling it. That's the extent of it. And then from there, where we are today, 5 years later, we have gone through a number of different iterations in the product. We've gone to go find a much better, stronger product market fit than we originally imagined. And, we've been able to take the data that we captured, kind of on day zero. And the roadmap was always to take that data and enhance it with AI. Now, obviously, the trajectory of what's possible with AI has changed significantly in the last 5 years. And that's been a real benefit for us, because the things that we were trying to solve using conventional AI prior to GPT was taking a ton of effort, a ton of work, a ton of resources. And then GPT comes around, and we're able to kind of execute a whole lot faster and be a lot more creative to create even greater wow moments because of the availability of artificial intelligence. And so, it's really you see a compounding effect all throughout my career in being around systems, data, field work, operations, entrepreneurialism, product deployment, go to market, and then ultimately now, using modern AI to solve conventional problems.
So how do you actually operate on a daily basis? I mean, what's the service look like and the functionality? Sure.
So we sell our software to service providers, and those service providers, they go and they use our software, in their day-to-day business. And so a good example would be a property manager, right? Property manager has properties all over the place. They're often in different regions. Let's imagine that something goes wrong, a toilet goes wrong in a resident's house. Well, that can go a whole bunch of different ways today. Today, say toilet's not working, and the property manager will dispatch a maintenance technician, and that maintenance technician will maybe take a day or 2 days to get there because they're busy. And when they get out there, they're able to diagnose the problem. Now, if they're lucky, they're able to solve the problem in that first trip, but often they don't have the parts. Let's say, for example, that they need to get a wax ring or a flapper or something like that. So then they got to go to the store. Well, that could be a two-trip work order. That's really expensive. And so with Iris, what happens, and it's really expensive and inconvenient. And with Iris, what happens is that resident complains or submits their request for the toilet issue, and then the maintenance company or the property management company just offers to the tenant, "Hey, look, Gary, I'm sorry your toilet's not working, but it could be a couple days before we get out there. But if I could take a minute right now of your time, I might be able to speed things up considerably. Does that work for you?" And 99% of the time, people say, "Yes, I'd love to solve some of my time right now." At which point they send them a text message. There's no app to download. There's no overhead. And you click through as the homeowner or the resident, and then the maintenance company can see through your phone, very similar to kind of like a FaceTime experience or Zoom experience, and they're able to diagnose the problem. Now, what makes it different than Zoom or FaceTime, in the context of AI, is all that data is captured. The GPS location is captured. What is the checklist that's followed is captured. The images, the data, what's been said has all been captured. And we take all of that, and with AI, we create a work order. And that work order is perfect. Now, it can be closed if we do remote resolution, but if not, that work order now has all the parts, all the services, all the things that need to be solved instantly. Now, that might seem like something that is fairly trivial with respect to work order management. But ultimately, one of the big things we suffer through is that the details aren't accurate. It takes too long to create that work order. All the details are just sitting on a clipboard of a van, or the person just can't get there to see the data, to see the situation. All of that stretches out the time it takes to close a work order, and all of that makes work orders way more expensive than they need to be. Just imagine all of the dollars that are spent on trip fees and diagnostic fees just because the maintenance technician can't see the problem and they have to guess. There's at least 1/3 of an invoice is just spent on my trip fee. So if we can eliminate or cut back that trip fee for property management companies and speed it up at the same time, we can make a better resident experience, we can reduce the cost to operate, and make things a whole lot better for both the resident, the trade, and the maintenance technician, and the property management company.
Are your main customers B2B, or you're actually going direct to consumer then?
We're just B2B. So we sell into the businesses that serve their customers.
And are you all over Canada, or what sort of geography?
We've got customers in the UK, customers in Australia, customers all over North America.
And it's all done via AI and on a phone app, or how do they?
There is no app. Like, one of the things that we really believe in is that, and we've had success in, and it's become a buying rationale, is that apps are, an app to have on your phone should survive the toothbrush test. The toothbrush test is, I'm going to use it as much or more than my toothbrush on a daily basis. Now, for a maintenance request, you might get that 4 or 5 times a year. In fact, the more times you have it, the more upset you are. So the last thing you want to do is ask a homeowner or resident to do some more work when they're suffering through downtime for their equipment or within their home. So we really believe that having an instant web application that can launch on any device allows for a more rapid, real-time, kind of on-demand customer experience. And our buyers choose us because that is important to them. So they're choosing Iris because they don't want to spend or wait the 5 minutes trying to teach their customers how to install an app. They want to just get to the problem, the resolution. So we're able to cut down the average handle time of a call because you're eliminating all that technical overhead that happens in real time. And so, like, imagine you just get a link, you click on it, and boom, you're on a video call. It happens in like 1 or 2 seconds versus the 4 to 5 minutes that it takes to download an app or coach someone how to download it.
And you get a video call direct to a representative.
That's correct.
And they explain. And how many branches, or how is it actually run? Is there multiple branches, or is it all centralized?
I mean, we find the most success when it's centralized. That being said, we have one customer that has really done a great job where they have a decentralized workforce and decentralized customers. So their customers are in 40 states in the US, and their people are in about 40 states in the US, but they're not in the same states. So what they have to do is the person in state number 1 serves customer in state number 30. The person in state number 30 serves the person in state number 1, just because of the way their expertise is domiciled in the different states. And so for them, they have a real network approach to solving their problem, and they've seen a tremendous amount of organizational flexibility. And in fact, they've been able to, put it this way, arbitrage the wage differences from different regions. So let's say, for example, you're in London, and I'm going to imagine that the British countryside has a lower wage rate than central London. I don't know if that's true or not, but let's imagine that. And so you could activate people in central UK that have the skills, that have the talent, have the expertise, and they are able to serve people in London right from their chair. That kind of arbitrage for talent is something, a solution that we're all seeking to find these days, because we're stuck with the lack of people, the lack of people, the lack of good people, and the increase in demand for services in all of our different centers.
Who does your AI? Do you do your own in-house AI technology, etc.?
Yes, we build our own. All of our models are, now we use OpenAI as a processor, but we have an enterprise license that keeps those models private. And so we use them for all of the compute, but we set up our own models. We do our own AI. We do all our own prompting. All that's all our.
What about marketing and getting your name out there? How have you managed to do that over the years?
You know, we've had, I would say the biggest In our market, it's largely, people like to call it hand-to-hand combat or relationship-based. So we've had the most amount of success with LinkedIn and events. And I would go as far as saying, if you're a startup company, and I really have conviction around this, you should only consider starting in LinkedIn. As a channel, email and cold calling just don't provide enough feedback on your messaging, whereas LinkedIn is a single place where you can have your, I call it your doormat, like your profile. You can have your outbound, and you can have all of your content for your inbound in a single spot. And that makes LinkedIn very powerful, because if I reach out to you, Gary, on a cold outbound message, you see right away who I am. And then it's one click to learn about what I'm talking about. And even if you don't accept that message, I'm still going to show up in your feed as I produce more content. So it really is a virtuous engine in terms of being able to attract prospects into your funnel for early stage founders. And then from there you get bigger, right? You scale differently as you pass certain thresholds.
Going back to when you left full-time employment, how did you make that transition? Obviously you're in employment and you're building this on this, as you're going along before you do this full-time. How did you manage that transition?
Well, I mean, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm not a very good employee. So I really have never been, outside of the very beginning years of my career, I haven't been an employee. And so despite that period of time where I was at Deloitte and we were in the back end of an acquisition where they didn't really hire me, they bought me. And so I think that, at the end of the day, that's part of what I bring to the business is I'm an entrepreneur. It took me probably 25 years to say that out loud, but ultimately it's one of the things that makes me unique. And, that there's a good spot for that in a lot of organizations in certain roles, and other roles it just doesn't fit. And so I always like to say that, if you ask a monkey to win a swimming race, you're probably going to lose and spend a lot of energy, right? And so in my case, I'm the monkey. And so I like to climb trees. So put me in a jungle and I'll be able to make that work. And so that's kind of like the reality of my personality and my unique ability is that I'm an entrepreneur. And so there are organizations that really value that. And there are organizations that's not really a core competency of theirs. And so for me, I've got, enough awareness about who I am and what I bring to the table that I'm pretty, aware of like, hey, I can serve a purpose. I can drive a project. I can execute. But this is how I think. I think like an entrepreneur. I do not think like a corporate person. And that's just like, it's not being a lone wolf by any means. It's just the DNA coding of the way I operate and the way I see the world.
Tell me the difference between how an entrepreneur thinks and a corporate individual thinks, in your view.
That's the first time anyone has ever asked me that question. I would say the difference between an entrepreneur and let me preface this with this is not an either or better or worse statement. This is just a different and different, right? An entrepreneur has a natural tendency to be exceptionally curious about the world around them. And they're often trying to figure out why it works that way. And where an entrepreneur has a tweak is that when the way the world works doesn't make sense to them, they're going to try and figure out why. And if there's any sort of gap in between the way the world works and the way the entrepreneur thinks that it should work, and it's commercial, they're going to kind of become a bit obsessed about that gap. Now, in a corporate person's perspective, that gap can often be perceived as that's just the way it is. I don't need to solve that problem. If someone would have solved that problem today, if it needed to be solved. And so they just kind of like accept that as a status quo. So I would say, and that's also okay. Trust me, there are plenty of entrepreneurs on the planet that have wasted time wasted a good portion of their lives trying to solve things that don't need to be solved, right? And so I would say the difference is that we get an itch when there's a gap between the way we see the world, or the way that we understand the world, and the way the world works. And we want to exploit that gap. And then in a corporate person, they understand that there is just do your job, right? Do your job, be consistent, be excellent at that, and then you can have exceptional results by staying in your lane. So I would say that's the big difference. And again, there are years where I've wished that I had the skills to be a corporate employee, but I just don't.
Going back to Iris, obviously that was filling a gap. What other gaps can Iris fill going forward?
It's interesting. So we've been getting a lot of pull from maintenance companies seeking to improve inspections. Obviously, inspections is a big part of any sort of capital asset management. But we didn't really have a line of sight into how deficient the current options are from an inspection perspective. In many cases, we really are competing against a clipboard. And so those clipboard exercises take a ton of time, and they're really ripe for disruption from a execution perspective. That's the first one. The second one is sales. I wasn't really aware of how much sales were being done, about the physical space over Zoom or over telephone, and prompting more trips. So now we've got customers that use Iris to do sales. So they'll sell installation solutions, they'll sell cleaning solutions, they'll scope, they'll estimate, they'll do all of that remotely rather than dispatch a truck. That does a couple things. For them, they're able to reduce the time it takes to provide an estimate. So if you can imagine that you need to do minor remediate, let's just do a painting job on a unit, and I want to get 3 estimates. Well, you usually take the first one. If the first one comes in and it's within your ballpark, you're probably going to take it, right? Because you just want to get the job done. So what Iris allows you to do is that when that first request for service for quote comes through, Gary wants to get his office painted, our customers can go, okay, Gary, I got your request. Can I take a look right now, as I said earlier, and I'll be able to get an estimate back to you in half an hour. Would that work for you? And Gary says, yes, I'd love that. And so then our customers said, okay, Gary, I'm going to send you an SMS message, and we're going to follow through. Walk me the space you need to have painted, and I'll be able to get an estimate to you in half an hour. Would that be aligned with what you're trying to achieve? And Gary says, heck yeah. So then they send him a text message. They walk them through the unit, and they go, okay, all right, Gary, we'll get you an estimate in half an hour. You've already established a connection with the buyer. You've already gotten a scope around the problem that needs to be solved, and you're able to get them an estimate before, in the first half an hour. What's interesting about that speed differential is we have customers that are able to get the job started before the second estimate even gets scheduled.
That's unbelievable.
Can you imagine that from a cycles perspective? I'm going to get you an estimate in half an hour. People will be there in 24 hours. Your estimate number 2 doesn't come in until 48 hours. You're already invoicing before the second estimate's even through.
That could happen in the UK anywhere.
Of course, yeah. Well, we actually have customers that are doing it crisscross, right? Let's say, for example, you've got a team in Edinburgh and a team in London, and the team in Edinburgh is slow, and let's say it's seasonal or there's some reason about it, but the team in Edinburgh has a busy season, and the team in London has a busy season, and they're opposite seasons. Well, the team in London could support the Edinburgh crew when it's busy in Edinburgh, and the team in Edinburgh could support the London crew when it's busy in London, and no one has to move anywhere, right? And that that arbitrage of labor is something that everybody is trying to solve, because there's just not enough people out there to do good work.
In the blue-collar industry, it's a struggle to get quality people to do any job.
Well, particularly when we treat them as though they're disposable materials. Truth is that a person who's been in a trade position for 20 years, because they're not going up on ladders anymore, because they can't lift anymore, that doesn't make them useless. That makes them actually useful, because getting up on ladders and lifting is actually kind of the lowest level of work, the value that they can deliver. But whereas that if they have their knowledge that they have accumulated over 25 years about boiler units that were built 10 years ago, about whatever, right? That knowledge we're losing that every single minute of every single day because we say to them, because you can't run, jump, swim, you can't do the job. Because you can't lift, you can't ladder, you can't do the job. It's just not the case anymore, right? If you have the technology, we can extend the careers of these people. We can make it safer. We can make their lives, extend their careers just because of knowledge. We can reduce the physical labor so we can make it extend the careers. We can have them work through injury. We can have them work through maternity or maybe other low lift years of their lives. We can potentially double the size of the workforce by making it gender neutral from a workload perspective, because we're talking about the knowledge that they have, not their ability to exert the physical efforts to do the knowledge. And that's the big gap that technology can close. We've seen that every single day in other industries.
So, I mean, everyone talks about AI and helping and adding to the white collar system, but I don't think anyone thinks about how it can help the blue collar system, and your technology does.
And I think that that's one of the things that we're going to see in terms of like exponential improvement is AI in blue collar work, because of the gap between the current state and what's possible with technology today is so wide. And we can close that gap literally in one day in many cases. You can go from using a clipboard to just using voice notes and having work orders automatically deployed, right? And workflow to automatically parts, price, effort, labor, all that going off to the dispatch community to get someone to do it. But everything's already figured out, approved before in like 20 minutes. That presently takes 48 to 72 hours and a lot of effort, not to mention the unique ability of many of these trades folks is working with their hands, or at least with the context of the physical environment. And we're asking them to do a lot of paperwork, which, like I said earlier, it's just not about me. It's just not what their strength is. So how can we use AI to improve their lives and their careers by helping them focus on the thing that makes them special?
Building obviously a tech company is no easy feat. How did you underestimate what was needed, or how difficult it would be, or actually was it quite a simple, smooth process for you?
This is a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
Building a company is horrible. It's the hardest thing in the world.
I meant a technology company, because obviously technology changes so quickly.
Yeah.
It's one thing building a company of your own, getting clients, getting yourself out there.
It is
keeping up with the technology changes.
Yeah,
it's like a double whammy.
100%. It's the single hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I swear to God, there's 100 different things that you can do that are better than this. It's not for everyone. And keeping up with the technology, staying relevant, being on top of the news, being in front of your audience, doing podcasts like this. This isn't for everybody. I think I tend to, conscribe the idea that entrepreneurialism is an affliction. It's not something that you pursue. It's something that chooses you. And when it chooses you, you have to respond to it, because the world needs entrepreneurs. The world needs founders, but it's not for everyone. And I wish I would, like I said earlier, there are years of my life that I wish I was not an entrepreneur. I'd probably have more money and I'd probably have, more time. But the reality is it's just not my coding. And I've got to adopt.
Do we become entrepreneurs because we're not really that employable?
Well, I think that ultimately true, but we're not employable in the conventional sense, right? The reality is that entrepreneurs' job or time on earth, or why we're on this planet, is to identify those gaps and to close those gaps, and to invent things, and to bring things to market, and to sell things, and to do all the evangelizing that's required, to listen to people. All those things that entrepreneurs do, if we didn't do them, no one would, because they're on the other side. So if you think about it in terms of like a corporate person versus an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur might be considered as steering, and then a corporate person is horsepower. If there is no entrepreneur, there is no direction that's been set. If there is no horsepower, there is no way to get there. So they've got to work together.
I agree. Going back to the services you were talking about, from physical, like painting jobs or whatever, to me that sounds like you're almost like the Amazon of the practical side of life.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
You're a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
For anything we need. My car door won't open. I need a paint job done. I need this. I need that. I mean, that's what Amazon does from a consumer point of view, but you're actually doing something similar within the construction and general building industry, and well, a lot more than that.
I would say that a better. So you're on the right track. Like the better analogy would be more of a Shopify. What I mean by that is that we sell our technology to the service provider, and they use it to grow their business. Whereas Amazon's a marketplace. That's I think what you're talking about is where the world wants to be, but the world's not ready to buy that yet. And so we got to be where the world's ready to buy, and that's where we can sell our software to a technology provider, or to a service provider, and the service provider uses our software. So we're not disrupting too much. Like that's one of the things that we often fall into, and this creates a lot of companies to go under, is you try and create a solution that is just too many steps away from the current state. That's just a little too uncomfortable to buy. And we've got to kind of keep things, I think of it like one radian or one rondial from the current state. And then we just got to keep bringing them forward and bringing them forward and bringing them forward so that they feel the benefits of the advancement of choosing that technology, but we try and limit the downside or discomfort of choosing new technology.
What have you had to learn and unlearn while you've been growing this business?
I would say the biggest, and again, it's always the most recent lesson is the most impactful lesson, right? And I would say the biggest thing that I've learned is that I don't get a vote in the success of this company. Only the customer does. And so and the world doesn't care about my point of view about how the world should work. It really doesn't. There's more crass ways of saying it, and you can imagine how to put it that way. But they really don't give 2 cents as to what my ideas are. They just care about themselves. And so what I've learned the most in the last year, because I've learned a lot along the way, but the last lesson is most impactful, is that you got to figure out what people are trying to achieve, number one. Then you got to figure out what options do they have before they've even met you. And then you got to figure out why those options are frustrating. I think that we often get told to pursue pain points, but I've realized that humans are exceptionally good at enduring pain, or just suffering through pain, or just dealing with it. And even say deal with it, take it on the chin, stiff upper lip, all that stuff. And so we're very good at enduring pain, but we're not very good at enduring frustration. And so I would say that the biggest lesson I've heard in the last year is that don't get fooled by pursuing pain points. Follow frustration. And frustration means that you've tried something to solve that problem, and that something didn't work. That's where you find commitment to action and individuals that are seeking change, because they've already failed once. There's been a failure to launch in their previous attempts to try and solve that problem. That's where I think that's the biggest lesson I've had in the last year, is that pain points will pull you into all different areas of believing what should be solved, but frustrations is what makes people.
A good lesson. So if you could go back 3 or 4 years ago when you first started, 5 years ago, what would you do differently, if anything?
Get a job.
You'd get bored, and you wouldn't like it. And
Yeah, I probably wouldn't like it.
you'd upset your bosses, and
100%. I'd ruin everything around me. I'd be chaotic. I think there's a lot of really good lessons to be learned. But if I go back to the 4 companies I've started, I would revisit our founder agreement. It would be the very first thing that I would fix and do differently again as a founder agreement. The reason for that is that as founders, we get all romantic about starting a company when it started, but then when things get gritty, you really figure out who's in it and who's out. And if you fix your equity at the very beginning on a percentage basis, you're really screwed when it comes down to who's in it and who's not. And you end up carrying a lot of founders on your back. And I'm founders have carried me on their back, right? But you end up having a disproportionate ownership percentage relative to the effort being delivered. And so I would say that the one biggest lesson 4 or 5 years ago is I would say, in your founders agreement, have 7-year vesting on your equity, and you will have a very different company than every other company that's out there. I have conviction that your founders agreement is where your company is decided on whether it has a chance of survival or not. And that's at conception. Before you've even thought of a product or built a product like that, you've already decided how this is the probability of survival based on your founder agreement. And that's pretty boring stuff. That's pretty boring.
It's quite tough to do though, isn't it?
Well, you got to decide. I think there's the reality where you can say to your partner or your founders, hey, look, there is a low likelihood that everyone's going to make it out of this. And so let's put an agreement together that is fair, that represents the effort that people are going to put in. Now, there's some people that have written some really good books called Slicing the Pie, which I think is a good way to start, but kind of overcomplicates things. Ultimately, from a startup perspective, you should have earned equity for every month that you're there. And that's plenty.
Yeah,
that's a good enough model to figure out who's going to be in it or not. And then that gives you, as the leader of that company, that gives you a chance to help prune the organization so the company can live. Because people forget that the company is a different entity than the people that are in the company. And it's a CEO's job to make the company survive the best, longest, fastest, and grow the company. And the way to do that is by making sure the best people possible are working on that goal of the company. Because it's not my vision of the company, it's a vision that the company adopts, right? And so as you begin to take on capital, as you begin to take on other investors, other stakeholders, people quit, hire, all those things, you got to remember that it's about the company. And that's the part that we often forget when we, as founders, and we get really romantic about the idea of creating something. And so we got to distill it back to the fundamentals of there's effort that's required to build this company, and that effort has to be earned, not given. And that's the fundamental, I think, that founders have to consider. You said 4 or 5 years ago, and that fundamental really has a life or death implication on your organization.
I think it makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Well, at what point, I've got a couple of questions before we wrap up.
Yeah, let's do this.
One, is from our conversation. At what point does a founder create an entity where you become corporate?
It's a great question. I think you get to a point, well, this is again, you don't get a vote in that one. Your board does. And this is why board is so important. And this is also why you need to think about the company and not yourself. So founders, good founders, and I think I'm probably 1 foot in the good founder boat and 1 foot in the bad founder boat. Good founders either think of the company first before they think of themselves, and the company has to succeed, and a good founder is self-aware enough to know when they need to step down and pass it on to a professional CEO. And that's when the corporate elements start emerging. So that's the answer. The answer is that a good founder recognizes when it's not their job anymore, and they hand over that job gleefully to somebody else to professionally manage it, because they know that it's about the company, it's not about them.
Do you think that change is built on size and profitability and turnover, or is it built on other issues?
I mean, if I say the word stage, it obviously sounds very vague relative to those things you just talked about, because it could be number of employees, it could be revenue, it could be complexity of the business, it could be wartime CEO versus growth CEO. It could be all those different things. Again, I don't think you get a vote. The environment votes on whether you're the CEO for the moment. And so the founder has to be self-aware about their... Sometimes you don't have a lot of options, so you just have to adapt yourself. And then they got to be self-aware about the company. And those are two different... And then, those are the two things that a founder has to be mindful of, because otherwise you get caught up in the emotion of the company being kind of like a child. But it really isn't. It's just a company. It's not a baby. It's a business.
Well, what's the long-term plans for Iris?
Ultimately, when we take a look at visual communications, the population has already decided that video is the easiest way to talk to people. So for us, we're looking forward and we're eager to see how computational vision will begin to help prepare these work orders even faster. So we hope for a world that gets even easier from a computational vision perspective to determine what are the parts, people, materials, all those sorts of things to be able to solve the problems. I don't think that we're going to see a world where, AI is going to turn a wrench, but AI is going to be able to determine what needs to be done the easiest way to turn that wrench. And in many cases, we're going to see, as an example, we're working on one customer right now with this, is that they use Iris to figure out the problem. We integrate with Amazon. Amazon sends the part to that person's home before the technician even gets there. So things like that begin to change the way the world works. What's that?
That is amazing.
Yeah, so that's a 2026 thing, right? So we'll see that this year, that you're going to get a Iris call. The part will be at your house before the tech gets there. That's
fantastic.
That's 2026. And so that's how we see our software starting to go forward and changing that world. Like, imagine that, right? Oh, what's this flange for? Oh, I got a plumber coming tomorrow. I guess it's already here. The plumber hasn't got here yet.
Fantastic. So, if you were going to advise a new entrepreneur, who's leaving the corporate world, and he's going to start his own business, what advice would you give him? Apart from the founder's contract.
Yeah. I would say, so I get pretty blunt about this, so I appreciate the question. They're founders and they're fakers. And it's a pretty easy line. Once you kind of figure out how to see it, it's pretty easy to figure out who's who. A founder is someone who is compelled to solve the problem for people, and they're infinitely vulnerable on their point of view. They're willing to accept they're wrong for the pursuit of success. A faker is not. And the difference between them both, and if you're starting out a company, before you start the company, what I encourage you to do is to write 3 times a week, post it on LinkedIn. So before you create a website, before you create a name for the company, you have to understand, as a founder, the first meeting you get is because of you, not because of the product, the solution, or anything else. The only reason why Gary is meeting with Guillermo today is because Gary is interesting and Guillermo thinks he's interesting. So we have a conversation and we kind of, this is why we're here today. So as a founder, you've got to make yourself interesting to the market, and you have to write about the problem. If you cannot write about the problem, you are cascading your own opinion about the solution on people who know more about it than you do. And that's arrogant. So the founder is vulnerable, a faker is arrogant. And so if you go out and say, and I may sound arrogant when I say these things, but this is the God's honest truth, is if you don't write about the problem 3 times a week, you should not consider founding the company. You should hold back and stick to what you're going to do. Don't write a line of code. Don't invest a penny of your money until you can write, because writing is free, and writing helps you think about your audience, who's going to read it, recognize that no one's probably going to read it at all, but write it, put it on LinkedIn, Attach your thoughts to your face, your mind, your entity. First step. And number 2, do that for 4 weeks. So write 12 articles, for 12 articles about the problem. And as you start thinking about the problem, and as you write about the problem, you will learn about the problem. You will think about the problem. You'll learn to obsess about the audience and the problem. If you do not do that, do not start a company. Stop, because you have not committed to the problem. And if you're not solving a problem, you're not a founder. You're a faker.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I tell you, I've learned a lot today. I learn something every time I talk to someone.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, I've learned a lot today, and it's a different opinion, different stance, and yeah, I really appreciated you being here. For the public and the people that listen in and go on YouTube and Instagram, etc., LinkedIn to watch this, where can they find you, find out more about Iris, etc.?
Probably easiest, best place is to go to LinkedIn. There's a IrisCX, look that up. Guillermo Salazar, look that up. You will find me. You could email me, gsalazar@iriscx.com, but you'll probably have a better journey by going through and looking us up on the web or on LinkedIn. Shoot me a DM. I follow and accept everybody, and I do look to have conversations. As I said earlier, as a founder, you've got to persist in an infinitely vulnerable state and seeking to learn and understand what the world's opinion of what your idea is. And so I'm constantly seeking to talk to people from CEOs to offshore virtual assistants. I talk to all of them all the time to understand how they're doing their work and how does that work valuable to the organization they work for. What are the struggles? What are the options they have available to them? Why they don't work? And how we can close that gap. And ultimately, that's something that I'm exceptionally passionate about. Another thing I'm working on as a side project, Gary, is I'm working on startup coaching for founders. So I've just kind of got pulled into it by an organization here locally on helping startup founders with their initial go-to-market. So if there's anybody who's interested in that, the go-to-market piece, ping me. I'm helping out with that. And if you're interested in Iris, ping me about that. Again, Gary, as you can imagine, I'm an entrepreneur, so I see a gap in the world on how startups are starting their companies, and I'm compelled to fix it because I do not want people to make the same mistakes that I made. And so for the same reason that I started Iris, the same reason that I actually want to help these people that are starting these companies, I want founders to succeed. I am a founder. For every founder that leaves founderhood for the wrong reasons, the world is a lesser place. So if I can make the world better by helping founders be more successful and make a better use of their time on earth, then I feel that I've been able to share my legacy of my understanding, number one. Number two, if you are an organization and you do have folks that are driving around in trucks doing inspections or maintenance, please give us a call. Maybe it's not a fit. It probably isn't a fit, practically speaking, given the law and numbers. But if it is a fit, if it isn't a fit, let's learn about why for each of us so we can eliminate that from the option pool. And if it is a fit, let's go create value together, help make your customers happier, your people happier, and solve problems and make more money.
Fantastic. This coaching for founders, is an excellent thing because I think so many people out there need that help.
They do.
Especially the younger guys who have got limited experience, of a business world. You learn by mistakes, as we both know, and that can be expensive.
Yeah. Well, and the most expensive thing is your time on Earth. Like I know that's very old person talk, generally speaking. But at the end of the day, like you're only 21 once. You're only 22 once.
You can't go back.
So just do not waste those hours on Earth because they're exceptionally valuable. And the world needs more founders, but we need founders that understand their time and recognize that, if you get the founder agreement right, you get your product right, your market right, the company is going to survive or fail based on how the founder chooses to spend their time. And so spend your time wisely because you only have so much of it.
All right, Guillermo, I've got to wrap up now.
Thanks, sir.
But I really appreciate you attending. And if you can hold on, I'd like to have a chat with you. But For our viewers out there, you've heard all about Iris. You've heard about the new founders coaching opportunity, which I recommend everyone should take. I'm Gary from A1 Solutions, signing off. Thank you for attending. I look forward to the next episode. Once again, Guillermo, thank you very much. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Gary, for having me. Take care.